very spectacular look at those spiral bands. They're still streaming overhead as they've been doing, and this was the view outside about 10 minutes ago. Just spiraling out to the southwest overhead at higher layers as we have the drier air undercutting these bands, and as you can imagine, with the sun out to the west, it's probably looking even more spectacular right now. So let me switch over and see if we can get a look. And gradually getting there. The sun is still a little bit too high, but I think once it starts shining underneath those clouds, we'll probably have something really spectacular to look at. So I'm going to push this window off to the side, and maybe we'll check back on that in a little bit. But here's what we're looking at this evening. I've brought this into Digital Atmosphere. This is, again, that program that I've written, and I'm still working on. I've still got, I'm working on it like even just about an hour ago. I'm trying to get some of the radar stuff up and working. I got some code back from my programmer in the Ukraine who's helping with this, and we're going to really start improving the software and hopefully get it out in the next week or two maybe. But here's what it's looking at right now, and I've used the bolder overprint of the NMC fonts, so you can really see underneath here, and I can see Augusta 31 right there at Port Arthur, and 35 at Galveston. And let's check out the current data. This was about 0Z, so let me bring that up here. I'm going to download the very latest data from about 10 minutes ago, and we'll see how those gusts are doing there. So hopefully everybody's doing good. Let me see who we got in chat. Sue M here. That's interesting. I just noticed that little toolbox font on the name there showing moderator status. I had Sue M as a moderator a couple months ago, but I guess it didn't show that for whatever reason. I think when I started messing around with it yesterday, it changed things. Okay, Ron Chalfant saying hello. Weather Service predicts Harvey going through Indianapolis Friday, Saturday, bringing 1 inch of rain. And I think it could get there a little faster. We'll take a look at the model forecast here. Hot in South Carolina, or South California, where Ron is. We have Ryan checking in, and Carl Berghoff is here. Ron says, we are lucky to have Tim guide us through this historic event. I appreciate that. Just doing the best I can here. Ryan talking about Invest 92, which is, yeah, that's going to have some potential later on, and I've got some charts lined up for that. That could be spelling more hurricane action here in about a week. And there's another disturbance I'm looking at that I'm going to show you guys. We've really got the Gulf and the Atlantic pretty active right now. Carl Berghoff worrying about a repeat of Andrew. Fun with Tech joining us. Burl H is here too. I'm hearing some very distant rifle shots outside. I think people are getting geared up for deer season here coming up in a couple months. Kevin McKinney joining us. Ryan says a full power Category 5 would be bad news. And Ron Chalfant enjoying that opener. Also Ryan too. And Tree Nelson joining us. Cameron Voss, new name here. Welcome to the program. A lot of heavy rain over Dallas currently. This could be a significant weather event of the current year. Raining in Dallas, really? For some reason I'm not seeing that here, but let me plot that current surface data and see what's going on. Okay, we've seen the winds die down in the Beaumont, Port Arthur area, down to 29 here, but they're picking up to 41 in Galveston and converting that to miles per hour. That's going to be about 47 miles an hour, so still some very potent wind gusts on the backside of the system, and I think we're seeing the center of the circulation somewhere in this area. You can see the curvature here of the rain bands. So we'd probably be putting that just south of the Texas-Louisiana border in that area. And this area here in Louisiana, this is going to be a very potent area for brief tornado development. I think we're going to see watches and warnings coming out of this area all evening. High shear profiles in this region, and here's one of the spiral bands starting to come northward. So we're going to be looking for that I-10 area to be under the gun in the next couple of hours. Hopefully no bad news coming out of there tonight. And on the backside, there's some dry air. 67-degree dew points down to 65. It feels very nice here in East Texas. 68 where we're at. And out in Austin, 67. And even 62 and 55 at Hondo. Wow. Some very dry weather coming down from the Stephenville and Hill Country area. Okay, so let's see. Here's the latest on Harvey. We've got a 7 p.m. update, and I missed that. Hang on a second. There it is. Sustained winds 50 miles an hour, 994 millibar central pressure, and they're going for 28.7939. Let's see where that is on the radar. Okay, so there's a Lake Charles radar. 28.7. And here, let me show you what I'm looking at. See, way down on the bottom here, GR level 2 gives us a readout of the cursor location, so 28.7, and I think it was 93.8 maybe. Sorry. 28.793.9. Okay, so that was the 7 p.m. position right there, and we know that that's tracking kind of to the east-northeast or northeast, and appears to match up pretty well with the radar signature here. And there's those bands, and looks like at the present time, no severe thunderstorm or tornado warnings for that area. Okay, a different way to look at this system is theta E, because this is kind of a reflection of latent heat, and this is what the storm is feeding off of, and you can see the very high latent heat right there in the center. This is the GFS model. Looks like a little dry air coming in from the Shreveport to I guess Tupelo area, kind of feeding in right there, but a little more moisture coming in from the Dallas area. And let's go up to the higher levels. And again, we can see very strong cyclonic circulation. 50 knots here around the Houston area. And we can see over the next 12-24 hours moves pretty much right up into southeastern Arkansas. Then up at 500 millibars, here's the presentation. We can see still a cyclonic appearance to the system. You can see that dry air advection working down through the west and south side. So the main impacts are going to be on the north side of the circulation. And there it goes into southeastern Arkansas early Thursday. And then we see a little different presentation here at 250 millibars. We see divergence. See, there's a little spot of divergence right there over the Houston shipping channel area. There's 0Z. You can see the very strong divergence here, indicating probably some very strong convection being forecast. And then overnight, looks like it kind of shifts to the east, and more convection out over the Lake Charles area. So this is signifying good potential for heavy convection from Port Arthur up to whatever that station is, KPOE. There's an Army base there, and I forgot the name already, but it's just west of Alexandria. Is it Fort Polk? Yeah, pretty much that entire area. And then, so that's going to be probably the focus of heavy precipitation, and then maybe some severe weather kind of co-located with it kind of in this area there. So that's a different look at the presentation here. This is the precip. So you can see GFS really picking up that precip tomorrow morning around dawn and into the early morning hours. So that's going to hit central and north central Florida pretty hard through most of tomorrow. And then the system will be quickly carried northeastward and out of the picture. Okay, so there's a look at the rapid refresh model from the SPC mesoscale analysis page. Looks a lot drier than it did a few days ago, so precipitation total should be, I guess we're starting to get out of this. Yeah, that's another thing I wanted to show you guys. Let's check out the total accumulated precip. So we're going to go to HPS at NOAA. And let me see if I can find, I think they moved the graphics around. Yeah, there it is, HPS precipitation analysis. This is using a lot of the radar data to kind of come up with a accumulation of precipitation totals, so we can look back on this over the past day or the past week. And let's see how much precipitation we've been dealing with. We've seen the charts that I've been presenting at the beginning of every webcast over the past 3 days, showing some very high amounts from we started out with about 22 inches northeast of Houston, and that's gradually dropped down to like 10-inch totals, but that's enough to give certainly accumulations in the 20 to 30-inch rainfall total. Okay, let's see here. Let me get this map set up. This is today's rainfall. And let me bring up the background a little bit so you can see the main focus of heavy precipitation. This is going to be from 12Z 6 a.m. yesterday to 6 a.m. today. So the heaviest rainfall has been in the southeast suburbs of Houston there. Sorry about that. There we go. So, yeah, from Beaumont along I-10 down to South Houston. And this white corresponds to 10 inches. So let's see what the total has been over the past 7 days. Anything that's white is 20 inches. And look how extensive that is. Pretty much all of Houston centered right over that area, 20-inch totals, and extending as far east as Beaumont, as far west as around LaGrange, all the way down to almost the Gulf Coast and up to the Woodlands and Huntsville. So I wish we could dig in there and get the exact values out of this. I might be able to switch over to normal and maybe fish the higher amounts out of this. Let me take a look here. Let me try departure from normal here. I'm trying to escape this color scheme here and get it to paint where the highest totals are. And this is just kind of like flooding. This is everything here is 600% above normal for that period. So I think the only way to get this data out in a usable format would be to download the actual GIS files, and that might be a project for maybe tomorrow. So anyway, yeah, this has been quite a rainfall event, and Houston has pretty much carried the brunt of that. Oh man, it looks like we've lost the outside colors there. There's the outside camera. So the camera switched over to black and white. So anyway, yeah, let's head back to the charts and see what we've got for the surface analysis presentation. This is kind of a good way to start things off, and we see the tropical storm, tropical depression, was it Tropical Depression 10 off the coast there? There's been so much going on that I'm kind of losing track of all these systems here. Yeah, that's 10. Potential Tropical Cyclone 10, they're calling it there. And we're seeing that off the Carolinas coast. And then here's Harvey right here. And where are the fronts? Well, I think Tropical Depression 10 or potential Tropical Cyclone 10, that's picking up definite baroclinic characteristics, and I would go ahead and just draw a front on that. I'm sure you can analyze a front there across the Carolinas. High pressure across the northeast U.S. continuing to pump cold air around the backside of that. And we've got another outbreak of cold air coming in from Manitoba and Ontario. So there it is right there, driven by this high pressure area in far northern Manitoba, and very extensive cold air advection across this area here. And then on the backside, we've got an area of warm air advection affecting the Northwest Territories. So maybe there's a little bit of downslope flow. Maybe temperatures a little bit above normal in that area. And actually, Alaska is actually looking kind of active. This is kind of unusual. Look at the system up here around the north slopes. So that's probably what's going to be coming our way here in several days. So I'm going to probably take a look at the surface analysis up there. Looks like some very potent cold air up there over the ice pack. Okay, so that's easy enough to do with digital atmosphere. We can just swap this out and replot the base map. So we'll take this pretty far north and see what's going on up in the Yukon and Alaska. And to really get the benefit of all of the data that's available, we're going to have to download the synoptic data, and I'm just going to go ahead and set this for 0Z. So there might be a slight amount of buffering as this comes through. Very active pattern, a lot to look at. This is not what I expected in late August. Quite often we get a very quiet weather pattern this time of year. Okay, let me do a slight adjustment here. I think for this one, I'm going to change the font to the defaults. And here we go. And you can see the very warm weather on the backside of that high. See right there over the Northwest Territories, lots of 70s, a little bit of downslope flow across the northern Rockies, and then the actual cold air that's confined to the Hudson Bay area where we have 40s and 50s. I wonder if we have any viewers up in Alaska. I certainly haven't heard any complaints about not covering Alaska, but there it is. Cold 30s, gusty north winds on the north slopes there, and looks like a bit of a cold front coming south. Kind of an unusual pattern there. So replacing the 70s here with 40s. So winter kind of moving there. You can just see it right there on the maps, moving into Yukon and Alaska. And I'm noticing further down, looks like the hot weather has come back to British Columbia. Yeah, look at that, 90s, 99, 95 in that same area that was dealing with wildfires a couple weeks ago. So that is definitely not welcome news, and I'm seeing 97. Geez, let me go in here and check out the Pacific Northwest. Going to zoom in on that and see what kind of weather we're looking at in the Pacific Northwest. And there's our current surface chart. Yep, 99. Moses Lake. That's a Boeing Flight Test Center area. They build the planes there in Everett and Renton. They fly them out here, and they do a lot of flight checks and stuff in that area. So that's kind of what that's known for. And 104, I'm not sure what station that is. But anyway, yeah, some very hot weather returning in the western U.S. Okay, the satellite, let's check that out. Wow. There's Harvey there. Let me cut out some of the frames here. There you go. So we'll get a better picture of Harvey. This is the visible satellite imagery. So mostly what you see here is low stratus and stratocumulus and towering cumulus in this area right here. Eye located right in this region there. So you can see the effect of the dry air convecting into the backside of the system there. And then on the other side you can see the convective precip bands. A lot of overshooting tops around the Beaumont Port Arthur area down to Galveston and along Interstate 10 in between. So as you would expect on satellite, on infrared, a lot of the enhanced areas, those are going to be to the north of the eye. And there you see them concentrated in the Beaumont Port Arthur, almost to the Lake Charles area. And looks like some of the convection associated with the system also affecting the coast near Mobile and Pensacola out to Apalachicola. And there's a look at the dry air coming into the backside of Harvey. So that's pretty much going to be the end of the system. Looks like that's going to be picked up by the westerlies, prevailing westerlies moving in, and that should sweep it pretty rapidly northward. And I would not be surprised if that outruns the models. Okay, let's take a look at the forecast. Here's the mesoscale forecast, looking at the high resolution rapid refresh. So, first question is how is it verifying? Looks like the position might be a little bit off. Let me go back to the radar. Yeah, you can see that the position at 7 p.m. 0Z, that was just south of the Texas and Louisiana border. So you can see that the initialization of this model is a tiny bit off. The actual location of the system is about right there. So you would kind of keep that in mind as you use the forecast data. And then moving through overnight, the trend is for enhanced convection just to the north of the eye. So that's going to hit the Lake Charles area, orange, pretty hard there tonight. And then these convective bands move in, and we're going to see a possibility for severe weather there. And this is about midnight. Let me show you why. I'm going to click on this, and this brings up a skew T for southern Louisiana. And you can see the very strong shear profiles here. Let me zoom in on this. And I really like this photograph here because they outline the height in kilometers. So here's 0 kilometers. Here's 1 kilometer, which is about 3,000 feet. There's 2, 3, 4, and so on. So 0 through 1 is the most important layer for storm relative helicity. And you can see a lot of curvature, a lot of length in that photograph profile. And when we compare that with the storm motion vector here, we sweep out a very large area, and that indicates we have very high helicities. So even though the instability is kind of on the low side, we're looking at lifting index -1, -2, Cape about 200 to 400, you can still get tornadoes out of a situation like this. So even though the Cape is low, the helicity is kind of on the high side. And if you look at the energy helicity index and the way that graph is shaped, it shows you that you don't really need a whole lot of instability as long as you have a lot of storm relative helicity. And you can still get tornadoes out of that. So this is kind of a high shear, low instability situation. And the supercell threshold, supercell data here, significant tornado parameter, I'm sorry, based on the LCL, that's a pretty high value right there, indicating very high relative humidity in the lower levels there. And also showing just enough Cape and storm relative helicity to support supercells in that area. And those are just going to continue moving northeast into central Louisiana there and track up into parts of southwestern Mississippi. And then the chance of tornadoes probably a little bit less there in western Louisiana there. Rain will be the main threat for that region. And let's head into the NAM forecast. Now yesterday the NAM was a little bit too slow. It was trying to keep the storm kind of in East Texas, and so we have to keep in mind that the performance has not been too good on this. But we'll just check it out very quickly anyway. So for tomorrow night, when we do the webcast, Wednesday night, it's got it centered just southeast of Shreveport there. And then the next webcast that we do on Thursday, got it centered in around the Memphis area. Yeah, that does look a little bit too slow there, since we've got the upper level westerlies picking up here. And then that's bringing it into Kentucky, Ohio, and Indiana around Friday. So, what do we have with the GFS? Actually, let's go to the European model. European model performance has been very good. So by 12Z, they're bringing it onshore. This could be a little bit slow. And then by Thursday morning, we've got it in Mississippi there. So this kind of appears in line with the NAM, because I think by Thursday night, the NAM had the circulation around the Memphis area. So I guess we're getting a little bit of agreement with the model. It could be a little bit of blocking by this strong polar high across Ontario. And then by Saturday morning, we've got the system moving into Kentucky and Ohio and Indiana. So maybe it will be kind of a slow progression northeastward. But you can see to the north the big change coming. See the very low pressures up in the Hudson Bay area. And then we see the arrival of some very cold air from the Gulf of Alaska, from northwest Canada. And there's a quick look at what the fronts would look like. Maybe maybe something like that. And this is a type of system that impacts the western U.S. very strongly. If this was wintertime, this would be kind of a good pattern for snow in Seattle, Vancouver. And typically we see very high pressure in central British Columbia, like you see here, instead of Alberta and Saskatchewan, which is what affects the plains. So when it's centered like this is where we get very strong fronts working southward through British Columbia. And we see a wind shift, for example, in Seattle. And if it was December and January, we would probably see snow with the passage of this pressure gradient. So very interesting pattern here. This is coming up for the 4th and 5th. So there we see it moving southeastward into the plains. Looks like it's overtopping the passes here in the Rockies. Coming into the Four Corners area, the Utah area. And maybe coming into Washington a little bit there. So this is the morning of the 5th on Tuesday. And now we see it working into the Great Plains there. So it's going to bring some definite cool air. Now the other change, you can kind of see the European model picking up on this, going for some kind of tropical disturbance in the Gulf. And we see that first emerging around the weekend. Saturday, you see the depressed pressures in this area here. Wow, look at that, another tropical cyclone. Good grief. Gonna have to start carrying note cards around to keep up with all this. But there it is. You can see the pressure starting to drop there in the western Gulf. And then we see the system emerge. And then making landfall, probably as a tropical storm in Louisiana around Wednesday. But that's probably not going to hang around for long, because with this strong polar high coming southeastward, that's going to move these systems out in quite a hurry. And then we have this other system coming from the southeast. Again, we're looking at the European model. Look at that 950 millibar low. This is probably like a Cat 3 storm, probably. And that's as far as that model goes. This is for Friday the 8th. Now the GFS is definitely picking up on this, and let me show you what the deterministic GFS forecast shows. Okay, so here's the forecast, and I'm going to kind of blend this together with the cool air that's coming in. I'm going to let you see the cold air that arrives into the central U.S. Okay, there we go. So we're looking at a GFS forecast. So around the 3rd or 4th, so we're going to watch this area right here. And you can see a bit of that cold air starting to spill southward into Montana around the 4th and 5th. Actually, this whole thing is probably a cold front. So there it is coming southward. So we're looking at, let's see, afternoon temperatures probably not too bad. 60s for the Dakotas and Montana. Ahead of it, though, you can see the veered southwesterly flow in Kansas with lots of 90s and probably even a few hundreds there with that downslope flow ahead of it. So this is on the evening of the 4th. So the next day when we do the webcast on the 5th, pattern's going to be looking something like this. So this is on Tuesday evening on the 5th. So it kind of looks like it starts out affecting Washington and Idaho to a certain extent. It started out there as at least I think the European model was probably going for more of a West Coast type event, but GFS bringing that right into the plains, and you can see these highs here, lots of 50s and 60s for the Midwest, and 79 for Oklahoma City for a high. And then it kind of continues sinking southward for Friday. I probably lost you guys for a second there. Okay, yeah, this frame we had here, that was for Tuesday night. And then for Wednesday, the 6th, yeah, there's that high kind of settling down. 76 for a high there in Oklahoma City, and much cooler where we have the strong cold air advection in the Midwest. And this is where we see things kind of changing out in the Gulf. See, for our webcast here on Thursday the 7th, look at that. We've got a bit of a tropical depression there off the coast of Brownsville. And here's the arrival of what looks like a hurricane coming in from the Gulf or from the Atlantic. And then just going very quickly, looks like the system across the Bahamas really gathers strength here. This is the 10th of September. And wow, look at these temperatures, 50s for 1 p.m. across the Midwest. Very cool air there. And yeah, look at that. And then it heads out into the Gulf and looks like it strengthens even more. But you can see we're way out at the 372 hour point. Pretty ominous looking, but let's take a look at the ensembles. I have to figure out where I put them. Okay, there. Let's see. Yeah, here we are. Okay, I had two different kinds of ensembles. Had more of a zoomed out view. But yeah, let's check these out. These are 20 different iterations of the GFS there, different perturbations. And I'm going to carry this forward all the way to about the 10th or 11th. And you can see with a couple of these models, we've got a hurricane there grazing the east coast of Florida. This model here also goes for a similar picture. And then we have this other model here, keeps the system more out into the Atlantic. And let me bring this forward another day or two. And then looking at some of the other ensemble members. Well, we've got this. This is going more south into the Florida Keys, bringing that into the Gulf of Mexico. That would be definitely a damaging hurricane event. Ensemble 16 also going for that scenario. And then we have this other ensemble member bringing it kind of up the Atlantic coast there. So let me zoom in on this a little bit more. And I'll bring this up to about the 10th or 11th, and then you can see all the different outcomes here. So there's a lot of variability still at this point. We know for sure that there is going to be some tropical weather action. We just don't know exactly which way the storm's going to go. So here's a couple of Atlantic coast scenarios hitting North Carolina and Virginia there. This one takes aim on Florida. There's a Gulf of Mexico scenario right here. And I don't know where the system is on all these other ensembles, but on the first ones, the first 10 here, another Florida scenario there, a Atlantic coast there scenario. So there's a lot of different possible outcomes here, and we're not going to really know for obviously another 5, 6, 7 days, and by then things should be tightening a little bit better. So where's this system coming from? Well, out in the Atlantic we got a wave there around the Cape Verde Islands, and this looks to be it. So this is Invest 93L, and you can see the different tracks. not going for any recurvature. In fact, a slight left turn here. So there's a good chance that that's going to head towards the there I am looking for that term again, Windward Islands. In any case, Montserrat, Guadalupe, Dominica. So yeah, you can see pretty much based on this, we're probably going to see an arrival somewhere in this area. And then we have the possibility for that to be working its way up the Dominica and Cuba region. So this is something we're going to be looking at here for the second week of September. Good chance of yet another hurricane, and then of course something else possible out here in the Western Gulf. So we'll be watching that also. So let me take a look at the chat here, and before I do that, let me give you something to look at. Maybe outside? Is it too dark? Yeah, you guys want to look at a spider web? Or actually, wow, what is that? Is that Venus? I think Venus is a morning star right now. Oh, I also wanted to mention there is a solar flare. I just got word of this like an hour ago. Unfortunately, well, or I should say fortunately, it's just kind of a weak one. It's a G1 class, and they're looking for a 30% chance of polar geomagnetic storms around August 31st. So that would probably be visible in Michigan, Maine, and a slight chance there in Indiana, New York, upstate New York, and New England. So we'll look for that, and let me give you the satellite data here real quick. I'm sure a spider web is not very entertaining. Yeah, let's check out the polar orbiter data. Can't believe September is almost here. Okay, August 29th, there we go. Wow, that's pretty spectacular there. It looks like a little bit of an eye, mostly due to the dry air kind of working into the circulation there, but that is Harvey. And a little bit better view there with Terra. And yeah, we can get right down in there and check that out. That's the center of a tropical storm there. Okay, let me take a look at the chat. A lot to look at. So sorry, I'm probably not going to be able to read all of this. I'm going to have to... I'm getting into a habit now of capturing all of the chat with the clipboard and looking at it later. So I will be looking at a lot of these in a little bit. Little discussion there about books. Yeah, Bluestein. Howie Bluestein's got some good weather books. He's got one called, I think, I'm trying to remember. It's a good 2-volume set on extratropical meteorology. So that's definitely worth looking at. Among one of my favorites, although a little bit technical. Tree Nelson from Fairbanks, so enjoying the Alaska coverage. Good to hear it. Slight cooling there in Central California, where Mike R. is. Ryan saying it appears the European future forecast model has once again been the contender for best accuracy. Yeah, I've been very impressed by the European model. I just wish everything wasn't so locked up with this model. I mean, I would think that one of these days they would start, kind of releasing some of the fields. It's like, with the Weather Service, everything is online, and they put out terabytes of data every day, and there's like more data on their servers than anybody knows what to do with. And I don't know if I can get into that server. I was going to try to show you some of the fields that they have in there. That would probably waste too much time, so never mind that. But yeah, NOAA, I mean, it's like, they release so much data, and there's so much stuff we can do with it, and we've got great sites like this, and we get, these amazing plots here, and using, I mean, we just can't do this with European data because there's just not enough detail from the fields. All we get is like pressure and heights and a few other things. So I really hope that policy starts changing here in the next few years. Okay, let me give you a little bit more satellite data to look at. Yeah, we can take a look at Harvey there. Carl saying he wishes the entire European model data set was available. Yeah, definitely agree there. Carl says he has Sharpie working, even customized his slightly. Yeah, Sharpie is pretty good there. And wind grids, I've been playing with that a little bit, and we'll probably bring that in maybe tomorrow or the next day and kind of play around with that a bit. Cameron Voss says, do I find it odd that in the past year there's been more tropical storms, hurricanes to skim by the U.S.? Well, we've just got higher than normal sea surface temperatures for one thing. That's one reason for the increase in tropical activity this year, and the reason for that, in turn, we don't really know. That probably gets into the thermohaline circulation, and a lot of that gets into areas that I don't really understand myself. So my main specialty here is mostly just on short and medium range forecasting. The climatology, that's like a whole different ball of wax there. Ryan says we are a disaster in waiting of epic proportions with our senior citizens and low-income citizens near the flood zones. Yep, coastal communities built on the coastline in for a rude awakening. That was discussed in depth at the NHC conference this past May. All right. Let's see here. I guess I'm probably about done. So I appreciate you watching the webcast. I'm sure we'll have a whole lot more to look at tomorrow night. I'm going to try to get PC grids and some of those other programs working. I've been messing around with AWIPS too, but a lot of stuff's still broken in that program, and I've sent some messages to them, and I'm not sure if anybody's working on it. But in any case, we'll try to get one of these programs running and have some fun with that. So anyway, that's probably about all I got for tonight. I appreciate you all watching, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow night. Take care and stay safe.